Do you remember the first time you heard a solid lifter small block screaming past 7,000 RPM? The 1969 Camaro Z28 wasn't just a muscle car, it was a rulebook loophole on four wheels. Today we're exploring 25 weird facts about the 1969 Z28 that even lifelong Chevy men don't know. Let's start with the name itself, because Z28 was never supposed to be a name at all. When Chevrolet created the package in late 1966, Z28 was simply the next available regular production option code in the order books, sitting right alongside mundane codes for radio deletes and heavy-duty radiators. The engineers called the car the Cheetah internally, and some wanted to badge it that way, but dealers and buyers started asking for that Z28 option by its code, and the name stuck like glue. For 1968, Chevrolet finally put Z28 emblems on the fenders, slash and all, making it one of the only cars in American history named after a line on an order form. Think about that. Pontiac had the GTO, Ford had the Mustang, and Chevrolet's giant killer was named by accident, by paperwork. By 1969, that accidental name was worth its weight in gold, and Chevrolet never dared change it. The 302 existed because of a rule book. The heart of the Z28 was a 302 cubic inch V8, a displacement Chevrolet never offered in any other car. Why 302? Because the Sports Car Club of America capped Trans Am racing engines at 305 cubic inches, and Chevrolet had nothing that fit. So engineer Vince Piggins performed a shotgun wedding, dropping the 283's crankshaft with its short 3-inch stroke into the 327's 4-inch bore block. The result was exactly 302 cubic inches of high-winding fury, built purely so Chevrolet could legally go racing against Ford's Mustang. The DZ code 302 got a forged crank, forged pistons, a radical solid lifter camshaft, and a massive 780 CFM Holley 4-barrel sitting on an aluminum intake. It was a race engine that happened to come with a warranty, and it breathed through big valve heads pulled straight off the Corvette's 327. Back in the day, most buyers had no idea their engine's displacement was dictated by a rule book written in a Connecticut office, not a Detroit drawing board. One number on a page, and an American legend was born. Chevrolet lied about the horsepower. The window sticker said 290 horsepower. Everybody knew it was a fairy tale. Chevrolet rated the DZ302 at 290 gross horsepower at 5,800 RPM, but the engine was still pulling hard well past 7,000. Period magazine testers and racers who put these engines on dynamometers routinely saw figures between 350 and 400 horsepower in showroom tune. So why the low number? Two reasons. First, insurance companies were starting to crucify anything rated over 300 horsepower, and a 290 rating kept young buyers' premiums survivable. Second, Chevrolet didn't want the Z28 stepping on the toes of the SS396, which was rated at 325 horsepower and positioned as the top dog. So the little 302 wore a number everyone winked at, and the hot rod magazines played along, printing the official figure with a raised eyebrow you could feel through the page. That's right, one of the most underrated engines of the entire muscle car era, and the factory did it on purpose. Hard to believe, right? You couldn't order one with an automatic. In 1969, if you wanted a Z28, you were going to learn to work a clutch, period. The Z28 was the only Camaro that absolutely could not be ordered with an automatic transmission from the factory. Chevrolet mandated a Muncie 4-speed manual, either the wide ratio M20, close ratio M21, or the heavy-duty rock crusher M22 for serious racers. The reason was simple physics. The 302 made almost nothing below 4,000 RPM, and the Power Glide and turbo hydromatic transmissions of the day would have turned it into a slug at every stoplight. The engine needed to be kept boiling in its power band, and only a manual could do that. At the time, this scared off casual buyers, which was exactly the point. The Z28 was a driver's car, sold to people who wanted to row their own gears and heel and toe their way through traffic like Donohue at Laguna Seca. In those days, that 4-speed requirement was a badge of honor, a quiet filter that kept the car in the right hands. Air conditioning was forbidden. Here's one that shocks people today. You could not order air conditioning on a 1969 Z28 at any price. Chevrolet flatly refused to install it. The official reasoning was that the 302's solid lifter valve train spun to engine speeds that would have destroyed the AC compressor of the era, flinging belts and grenading pulleys at 7,000 RPM. There was also the matter of weight and drag on an engine that lived or died by its top-end breathing. So buyers in Phoenix and Houston sweated it out with vent windows and 80-mile-per-hour airflow. The forbidden list didn't stop there either. No automatic, no air. And for most of the run, you couldn't even get it as a convertible. One famous exception exists, a single 1968 Z28 convertible built for GM executive Pete Estes, and collectors have chased that unicorn for decades. Imagine telling a buyer today the top option is roll-down windows. The cross-ram intake came in the trunk. The wildest option on the 1969 Z28 wasn't installed at the factory at all. It was shipped in the trunk. The legendary cross-ram intake, an aluminum dual-quad setup carrying two 600 CFM Holley carburetors mounted sideways across the engine, was sold as a dealer-installed service package for roughly $500, about $4,300 today. Chevrolet did it this way to dodge corporate rules and emission certification headaches, since technically the car left the assembly line with a single four-barrel. Dealers or owners bolted the cross-ram on afterward, and the result was an engine that pulled ferociously from 4,000 RPM to somewhere north of 7,500. It was nearly useless in traffic and magnificent on a racetrack, which tells you exactly who it was for. Genuine cross-ram setups are now worth more than entire running Camaros, with original units trading hands for tens of thousands of dollars. You heard right, an intake manifold worth more than a car. The brake option almost nobody bought. Buried in the 1969 order book was RPO JL8 four-wheel disc brakes borrowed from the Corvette, complete with heavy-duty four-piston calipers at every corner. It was arguably the best brake package on any American car of the decade, and it was a sales catastrophe. The price was the problem, over $500, at a time when the entire Z28 package cost less than that. Only 206 cars were built with JL8 brakes in 1969, most of them destined for race teams who knew exactly what they were buying. Roger Penske's Trans Am operation snapped them up because the rules required production-based brakes. Today, a documented JL8 car is one of the rarest and most valuable Camaros in existence, and even the parts are treated like relics, with correct calipers and rear disc assemblies fetching astonishing money at swap meets. Sometimes the smartest option on the sheet is the one everybody skips, and half a century later, the market never stops proving it. The 1969 model year lasted 18 months. Here's a strange piece of trivia. The 1969 Camaro had the longest model year in the car's history, stretching all the way into November of 1969. The all-new 1970 Camaro, with its sleek European-inspired body, ran into engineering and tooling delays. So Chevrolet simply kept building and selling 1969 models months after the 1970 Fords and Mopars had hit showrooms. Some of those late cars were titled as 1970 models by dealers, creating paperwork confusion that still trips up collectors and title clerks half a century later. The extended run is a big reason 1969 production numbers look so healthy, and it's why the 1969 body style burned itself so deeply into the American memory. It hung around. Did you or your family ever own a 1969 Camaro Z28 or otherwise? Tell us in the comments, and tell us what part of the country you grew up in. Vince Piggins, the father nobody knows. Everybody knows Zora Arkus Duntov, the father of the Corvette. Almost nobody outside hardcore circles knows Vince Piggins, and that's a shame because the Z28 was his baby from the first sketch. Piggins ran Chevrolet's performance product program during the years when General Motors officially banned factory racing, and he spent his career smuggling race hardware into showrooms under innocent-sounding option codes. It was Piggins who pitched a Trans Am homologation Camaro to management in 1966. Piggins who specified the 302 formula, and Piggins who later cooked up the Copo ordering pipeline that produced Ford 27 Camaros. He was a quiet, careful man who worked the system instead of fighting it and his fingerprints are on nearly every fast Chevrolet of the era. Back then, his name never appeared in the ads. The next time you see a Z28 badge, remember it was one stubborn engineer's end run around his own company's rules. It cost less than a good stereo costs today. Ready for the number that hurts? In 1969, RPO Z28 cost $458.15 on top of a base Camaro coupe that started around $2,627. A well-optioned Z28 rolled out the door for roughly $3,500 to $3,700, which works out to somewhere around $30,000 in today's money. For that, you got the DZ302, heavy-duty suspension, quick ratio steering, 15-inch rally wheels, and those iconic twin stripes. Meanwhile, a documented numbers-matching 1969 Z28 in fine condition now trades between $80,000 and $150,000 at auction, with Cross-Ram and JL8 cars sailing far beyond that. The math is brutal. The option package that created one of the most valuable Camaros ever built cost less than a set of decent tires does now. Let that sink in. Every one of us knows somebody who sold one cheap in the 70s and still won't talk about it. The cowl induction hood fed on weather. The 1969 Z28 could be ordered with RPO ZL2, the special ducted hood everyone calls the cowl induction hood, and the idea behind it was borderline genius. Instead of scooping air from the front, where pressure is messy, the raised rear-facing opening sat right at the base of the windshield, where a natural high-pressure zone forms as the car moves. The hood inhaled that cool, dense, high-pressure air and rammed it straight down into the carburetor. It was worth real horsepower at speed, it looked menacing, and it cost just $79. Racers had known about the cowl pressure trick for years, sneaking hoses from the cowl vents to their carburetors, and Chevrolet simply built the cheat into the sheet metal. The ZL2 hood became one of the most copied designs in hot rodding, and reproduction versions still sell by the thousands today, bolted onto everything from Chevelle to street rods that never saw a race. Weather itself became a performance part, and it cost less than a nice dinner out. Sales exploded 30-fold in 2 years. When the Z28 quietly appeared in late 1966 as a 1967 model, Chevrolet sold exactly 602 of them. Dealers barely knew the option existed, and the ones who did could hardly explain it. In 1968, word got out through Racing Winds and magazine covers, and sales jumped to 7,199. Then came 1969, and the dam broke 302 Z28s built in a single extended model year. That's a 30-fold increase in 2 years, one of the fastest word-of-mouth explosions in muscle car history, and it happened with almost no traditional advertising. Chevrolet let the racetrack do the talking. Every Trans Am victory on Sunday moved cars off lots on Monday, the original proof of win on Sunday, sell on Monday. At the time, nobody at GM predicted the Z28 would outsell entire competing model lines. Not bad for an option code created to satisfy a race rulebook. Mark Donohue made it a legend. You can't tell the Z28 story without Mark Donohue and Roger Penske. Their blue Sunoco Camaros steamrolled the Trans Am series, winning 10 of 13 races in 1968 and taking the championship again in 1969. Donohue was an engineer as much as a driver, famous for his obsessive pursuit of what he called the unfair advantage, and the Penske team's tricks became folklore. They acid-dipped bodies to shave weight, and legend holds they once vinyl-topped a Camaro to hide a reworked roof from inspectors. Every Donohue win was free advertising Chevrolet couldn't have bought at any price, and showroom Z28s wore the reflected glory of those dark blue racers with the yellow numbers. Donohue himself was the picture of the era, crew-cut, engineering degree, quietly ruthless. Those Sunoco cars are why the 1969 Z28 is remembered as a corner carver in an era of straight-line brutes, and surviving Penske team cars now rank among the most valuable Camaros on Earth. If these are bringing the memories flooding back, you are exactly who we make these for. Do us one small favor and subscribe so the next trip down memory lane finds you. That is all we ask. Now back to it. The red line was wherever your nerve ended. The tachometer in a 1969 Z28 marked its red line at 6,000 RPM. but everyone treated that as a polite suggestion. The DZ302's solid lifter valve train, forged internals, and short stroke let it spin safely past 7,000, and the engine actually made its best power up where most V8s of the day were flying apart. Racers routinely buzzed them to 7,500. Chevrolet's own cross-ram literature assumed sustained high RPM operation. This was completely alien in 1969 when the typical big block ran out of breath at 5,500 and buyers measured engines by torque at 2,000 RPM. Driving a Z28 properly meant wringing its neck all day on purpose. Owners talked about the sound the way people talk about music, a hard, flat, mechanical wail that no hydraulic cammed engine could imitate. In those days, you could identify a Z28 coming down the street with your eyes closed. It lost stoplight races to cheaper Camaros. Here's the embarrassing truth every 1969 Z28 owner eventually learned. In a plain quarter-mile drag race, a Z28 often lost to an SS396 Camaro that cost less. The 302 made only 290 pound-feet of torque and did almost nothing below 4,000 RPM. So, unless the driver launched it hard and shifted like a demon, the lazy big block simply walked away on low-end grunt. Period road test put the Z28 in the high 14-second range in the quarter, respectable but hardly heroic. The magic showed up when the road turned. With its quick steering, stiff springs, and balanced small block, the Z28 would dance around a big block in any corner ever built. It was a sports car wearing a muscle car's clothes, and plenty of buyers never understood what they had. Be honest, did you ever get surprised by one or do the surprising? Let us know down below. The Indy Pace car wasn't a Z28. In 1969, the Camaro paced the Indianapolis 500 for the second time, and Chevrolet built roughly 3,675 white RSSS convertible replicas with orange houndstooth interiors that collectors chase to this day. Here's the weird part. The Pace car wasn't a Z28 and couldn't have been. The Z28 wasn't available as a convertible, and its high-strung 302 was the wrong tool for the job of loping around a track at moderate speed in front of a crowd, so the actual Pace cars ran 396 big blocks with automatics. So the most famous 1969 Camaro in the world, plastered across every newspaper sports page in America that May, was the one Camaro configuration the Z28 buyer couldn't have. Plenty of folks at the time assumed the hot Camaro paced Indy. Nope. The rulebook special stayed home while its softer brother took the checkered flag glory, and dealers happily sold those white convertibles to buyers who wanted a piece of the moment. The Pace car got the photographs, the Z28 got the reputation. The axle ratios were borderline insane. Chevrolet backed the 302 with rear axle ratios that would make a modern engineer faint. A 3.73 gear was standard equipment, and buyers could check boxes for 4.10, 4.56, and even a 4.88 ratio through service channels. With a 4.10 rear end, a Z28 cruising at 70 miles per hour was turning close to 3,500 RPM, screaming down the interstate while wagons floated past at a whisper. Fuel economy in the single digits was common, and nobody cared, because gas cost around 35 cents a gallon. Those short gears existed to keep the peaky 302 boiling in its power band, and they transformed the car around town, making it feel far quicker than its torque numbers suggested. Today, we expect overdrive transmissions and 1,800 RPM cruising in silence. Back then, a Z28 owner heard every single mile, felt the driveline hum through the shifter, and most of them will tell you to this day that they miss it. The chambered exhaust was too loud to sell. For a brief, glorious moment in 1969, you could order RPO NC8, a chambered exhaust system with no conventional mufflers at all. Instead, the pipes contained a series of internal, baffled chambers that took the edge off the sound, barely. The result was a Z28 that sounded like open headers with table manners, and owners loved it exactly as much as their neighbors hated it. Police in several states began writing tickets, complaints piled up, and Chevrolet quietly pulled the option partway through the model year, making genuine NC8 cars rare and highly documented today. The option cost about $15, possibly the loudest $15 in General Motors history. Original chambered pipes are reproduced now for restorers who want the correct ear-splitting experience. Imagine that, a factory option canceled because it worked too well at the only job it had. The spoilers actually did something. Most wings and spoilers bolted onto 1960s muscle cars were pure costume jewelry. The Z28s weren't. The front chin spoiler and rear deck spoiler offered on the 1969 car came straight out of the Trans Am program, where Penske's engineers and Chevrolet's aerodynamicists found real high-speed stability gains, reducing front-end lift that made early Camaros light and wandering at 120 miles per hour. Chevrolet had to sell the pieces on streetcars to make them legal for racing under homologation rules. So buyers got genuine race aerodynamics for pocket change, and the rear spoiler cost just over $32. Late in 1969, an even bigger three-piece rear spoiler appeared, developed for the racers and shared with Pontiac's Trans Am. Every functional splitter and wing on today's showroom floors traces its family tree through programs exactly like this one. Race on Sunday, homologate on Monday. The name Camaro was a beautiful bluff. When Chevrolet unveiled the Camaro name in 1966, reporters immediately asked what it meant. Product managers claimed it came from a French word meaning friend, comrade, or pal. Then somebody discovered that in Spanish, Camaron means shrimp, and Ford's people gleefully spread that around. Chevrolet's answer was one of the great comebacks in Detroit history. At the press conference, a Chevrolet manager declared that a Camaro was a small, vicious animal that eats Mustangs. The room roared, the line ran in newspapers coast to coast, and the bluff became the brand. By 1969, with the Z28 humiliating Mustangs on road courses most weekends, the joke had teeth. That's right, the name was essentially made up, focus grouped folklore, and it didn't matter one bit. The car gave the word its meaning, not the other way around, which is how the best badges always work. 6 decades later, nobody thinks of shrimp, they think of stripes on a hood and a small block at full song. The 1969 body lasted one single year. Here's something many people get wrong at car shows. The 1969 Camaro's body is a one-year-only design. While it rode the same platform as the 1967 and 1968 cars, virtually every exterior panel was new for 1969, with deeply sculpted fenders, speedline creases sweeping off the wheel openings, a wider and lower look, and a new grille and taillight treatment. Then it was gone, replaced by the completely different second-generation car for 1970. That single-year status is a huge part of why the 1969 is the most beloved and most reproduced Camaro of all, so iconic that entire brand-new licensed 1969 bodies can be purchased today, stamped fresh, ready to build. When GM designed the retro 5th-generation Camaro that debuted in 2009, it was the 1969 they copied, not the original 1967. Because the 1969 is the one burned into everybody's memory, 1 year on sale, 57 years in the spotlight and counting. Some designs simply get it right the first time. Yenko wouldn't touch it. Don Yenko of Yenko Chevrolet in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania was the most famous performance dealer in America, and here's the odd part. His legendary 1969 Camaros weren't Z28s at all. Yenko wanted maximum straight-line violence, so he used Vince Piggins' Copo pipeline, the central office production order system meant for fleet buyers, to have the factory-build Camaros with 427 cubic inch L72 big blocks rated at 425 horsepower. Roughly 201 Yenko Camaros were created for 1969 this way, alongside about 1,000 other Copo 427 cars. The Z28 and the Copo occupied opposite ends of the same showroom, the scalpel and the sledgehammer, both born from the same engineer's paperwork tricks. Buyers literally chose between revs and cubic inches. Today, a documented Yenko brings north of $300,000, and the argument over which was the better Camaro, the high-winding Z28 or the earth-moving Copo, is still going strong at every cruise night in America. There's no wrong answer, and there never was. Insurance agents never saw it coming. By 1969, the insurance industry had declared open war on muscle cars. Young men driving anything with a big engine and a horsepower rating over 300 were getting quoted premiums that cost more per year than the car payments. The Z28 slid right under the radar. On paper, it was a small 302 cubic inch V8 rated at a modest 290 horsepower, numbers that looked almost sensible next to a 428 Cobra Jet or a 446 pack. Plenty of agents rated it like a secretary's commuter coupe with stripes. Meanwhile, the kid signing the policy was driving one of the fastest road course cars in America. Chevrolet never admitted the rating was strategic, but the timing tells the story, and rival manufacturers pulled the same trick with their own small displacement screamers. Back then, beating the insurance man was half the sport. Which one on this list would you bring back tomorrow if you could? We read every single comment, from used car lot to auction royalty. Every 1969 Z28 has lived 3 lives. First, it was a new car, respected and quick. Then, through the 1970s gas crunches, it became just another used Camaro. And this is the part that stings. Clean Z28 sold for $800 to $2,500, got repainted, big blocked, drag raced, and rusted away by the thousands. Nobody saved the paperwork. Then came the collector awakening of the late 1980s, and suddenly documentation was everything. Because 1969 engines were stamped with partial VINs, a numbers-matching DZ302 became the golden ticket. And today, verified cars bring $80,000 to $150,000, while Cross Ram, JL8, and famous race cars have crossed auction blocks for $250,000 and beyond. Whole businesses now exist just to authenticate them, decoding cowl tags, broadcast sheets, and casting dates like archaeologists reading ancient stone. The car never changed in all those years. We did, and our wallets followed. It beat Ford's answer to market by 2 years. Save the best rivalry for last. The Z28 was created specifically to hunt Mustangs in Trans Am racing, and for 2 full seasons Ford had no true showroom equivalent. Ford's response, the Boss 302 Mustang, didn't arrive until the 1969 model year, engineered under Bunky Knudsen, a former GM man, and styled by Larry Shinoda, the designer who had worked on Chevrolet's own performance projects. Shinoda even coined the Boss name, so Ford's Z28 Fighter was built largely by ex-Chevrolet talent, which had to sting in Dearborn. The 2 cars finally met head-to-head in the 1969 Trans Am season, and Penske's Camaros took the title one more time before Ford broke through in 1970. That 2-year head start defined the pony car wars and forced every rival, Mopar included, to build homologation specials of their own. It's why, at any car show today, the crowd around a 1969 Z28 is always 3 rows deep, and why an option code from 1966 still means something in 2026. If you enjoyed this, tell us in the comments what you'd like us to cover next. We've already got a long list, but the best ideas come from you. Most likes go straight onto it. Subscribe so you're here when it lands.
Si Junjun pala kasama ko rito. Si Grace wala pa. Ay, pasensya na po kung ngayon lang ako nakatawag ha. Busy po kasi lagi sa 2 trabaho. Naku, salamat anak.